Well, November is Adoption Awareness Month. Kendall and Tamara Schmitke had 3 beautiful daughters when they fulfilled their lifelong dream of adopting. In 2010, their entire family traveled to China to adopt their son and brother, Donovan. Well, during that journey, they learned that Donovan's family must have struggled to care for him properly because when he was 3 days old, they took a great risk, placing him where he would be found by those who care for disabled orphans. God's fingerprints are all over this beautiful story. I am so pleased that Kendall and Tamara are here from Owen Sound to share it. Welcome, folks.
Thank you.
Busy, busy people, church planters. 5 years church planting.
That's right.
Kendall, and you are the lead pastor at Church Without Walls.
That's right.
With the Christian and Missionary Alliance Church of Canada.
Yeah.
I love what God planted and how he did it in both of your hearts at different times to be the genesis of this story.
Yeah.
Kendall, I think it started with you as a teenager.
Well, yeah, it did actually. When I was about 16, I went on a missions trip to Thailand with our youth group. And my most vivid recollection of that trip was the day we spent in an orphanage, going up and down these rows of cribs. And they taught us that day that these children could have food, shelter, and clothing, but without human contact, they would fail to thrive. So our job was to hold these infants for 10 minutes, and then a bell would ring, and you'd put that one down and pick up another one, hold them on your skin, breathe on them, sing to them. And that day, I remember God said something to me, or God put a burden in my heart for these children, and I said something to him. I vowed to do something about this. I said, if you ever call on me, I will answer. I'll do something about this. But then that memory sort of faded from me as I went on with life and met Tamara.
Tremendously impressive, though, that this impact on a 16-year-old guy.
Yeah.
Terrific.
Yeah. Yeah.
We'll come back to what happened with
Sure.
that. Tamara, you also had a desire planted very early in your heart.
Yeah, it was actually, I was 16 also and was watching one of those information programs, and they were talking about international adoption. These families had all adopted from China, and God just placed it on my heart at that moment. I'm like, I have to do this. I just know this is meant for me. And so from that moment, I just thought, well, I'm going to get married someday, and I'm probably going to have a couple of boys, and I'll adopt a daughter from China. That was just my plan.
And this was discussed before you married.
Yep.
When we got engaged, Tamara said to me, like, you know, we had the how many kids conversation. Yeah. And I said, no, I'm thinking 2 or 3. And Tamara said, well, I was thinking 2. And then I have this heart to adopt internationally. And I said, yeah, I'm open to that. That sounds great. I can get with that program.
Okay. So, met at Bible college, married, 3 beautiful girls. What started the stirring?
Well, after every child, we kind of were like, is it now? I was anyway, thinking, is it now we try to adopt? And after our 3rd daughter, we're like, we're definitely done biologically, and let's pursue this. So I brought the topic up again with Kendall to say, hey, let's talk about adoption. And he's like, whoa, wait a sec. We said 2 or 3, and we're at 3, so I think we're good. And that kind of took me off guard because we had talked about it a few times before, and I was like, no, we want to adopt. And so yeah, it was a little tough because all of a sudden I felt, wait a second, where did that conversation go that we started?
Now, God told you to back off, didn't he?
Yeah, because I kept talking about it, and I realized it was not going anywhere, and I just felt God telling me, you know what, I just got to take it up with him. So I cried out for about a year. I did pray. God, this desire was so strong. It was burning in my heart. And I said I had to take this desire from me or place it on him, because I can't do this alone, and we're not meant to do this alone. And yeah, so that's where I just was on my knees a bunch of times, and yeah, praying and praying and praying.
God answers prayer, doesn't he, Kendall?
Yeah, he sure does. You know, in my own defense, our seat belts in our vehicle were full, our bedrooms in our house were full.
Your heart was full.
My heart was full. We were leading very busy lives. I wasn't opposed, but I didn't have a burden. And this was a big It's a big deal to adopt internationally, to take another child on. I wasn't sure that that was what we were supposed to do. So I sort of had, where she had a burning, I just kind of had a vacuum. And that carried on for quite a while. We kept revisiting it, and we were just never quite on the same page. And then there was a pivotal moment. Tamara one evening was surfing on adoption websites and scrolling through some pictures. I walked past her in the living room where our computer was, and an image came up. And it was, I don't know if it was even the same country as I visited at 16, but at that moment, it took me back. You know, sometimes when you smell something and there's a memory attached, and all of a sudden it was like I was there again. And that day in the orphanage when I was 16, and that vow I had made to the Lord, all of a sudden in the living room, I was standing there again. And the way my heart was breaking for those children in Thailand, my heart suddenly cracked open again. And I started to cry. I don't cry very much, but I started to cry. And all of a sudden, Tamara turned around and heard me sniffling behind her. I just had tears streaming down my face. And she asked me what was wrong. And I said, I made a vow. It just has come back. I made a vow that if the Lord ever needed me to do something about this tragedy, that I would step up. I would step into that. And I felt like he called that vow, called it in. And from that moment, suddenly I went from, I'm not sure we have room for another kid, to, I have another kid out there somewhere. Wow. We have to find this child. We have to take the steps, because that child is now parentless and waiting. And all of a sudden my van wasn't full. My house wasn't full anymore. It was absent at least one kid.
Mm-hmm.
Only God could do this.
That's true.
Sure.
It is so stunning.
Yeah.
I just think for anyone waiting for anything or anyone, this is what God's Spirit does when His call is on your life. Did you know it was China in that moment? You always had China on your heart.
Yeah, I did.
Tamara.
We did end up looking at a few other countries and agencies, and we did then in the end up at China, just because it was such a great fit for us. And
Now, and I want to say, international adoption isn't a cakewalk.
No.
And it's very costly.
Yes.
But God's confirmation in just throwing open doors. Tell us about your fingerprints in Interpol.
Oh, wow. Well, when we actually started the process to adopt Donovan, and it was the waiting child program, so it moves a lot quicker than, say, an infant. Okay. There are children with mild or correctable ailments. So they're waiting children, they're older, but they're available for adoption. So when we...
By the way,
yes.
You told me before the interview that, those waiting for an infant Chinese girl, it's 9 years, they're saying.
That's what we were told at the time.
So...
The line is extremely long. And so actually when we first looked, we were told that. That's when we looked into other countries possibly. And then God sort of kept saying, no, closing doors. And we came back to China and then discovered the waiting child program. So then that was our next question was, well, could we handle a child with some sort of mild illness or something, that surgical correction or club foot, cleft palate, missing digit, Hep B, carrying Hep B. And so suddenly we came back to the waiting child program and felt this is it. So yeah, we went down that road with China, and the doors started blowing open. At one point, we needed to get our fingerprints done through Interpol. We sent everything off, and we were told 6 months to a year, which was just painful when you're waiting and you're in process. And then the next that weekend, Tamara put a prayer request in our prayer bowl at church and said, "Please pray that this process would go quicker." Well, within 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
2 weeks.
The RCMP had no explanation for this.
Tamara phoned them and said, "Thank you. I can't believe we got our fingerprints back in 2 weeks." And the person on the other end of the line said, "That's impossible. I can tell you right now,
that doesn't happen.
It couldn't even make it in the mail service here and back to you in that time. This is impossible." And God just...
it was crazy.
But God knew Donovan was going to come up on the profile, and we were going to come up, and that timing had to match.
And you had a very needy child who had already had 2 surgeries?
3 surgeries
3.
before he was 2.5 years old,
What
and
were
then
you-
he was available.
What were you dealing with? What was Donovan dealing with?
Cleft lip and palate, 3rd degree bilateral. So very serious, a lot of surgeries needed. Even since coming to Canada, he's had a couple since he's been here and a couple more coming up this next year. So a lot of trips to Sick Kids Hospital. Yeah.
Now, the fact that he was in this Christian mission where he was so loved and cared for and adoption was provided is evidence of at least a very courageous mother. Was the one-child adoption policy being enforced at that time?
Yes.
Strictly enforced.
For sure.
It was more so in the cities, we're told. We don't even know which part of the country Donovan may have been born outside the city and then and brought in, but especially in the cities, in the higher populated areas, still enforced. So it's difficult if you have a child and that child has severe difficulties or illnesses. Childcare is not what we enjoy in our country as well. So families can be put in a very, very hard spot, backs against the wall. They can have a child that needs help and needs support, but they don't have that to give. In fact, they needed that child to be a provider and a supporter for them. And instead, this child may not be able to work, may need special care. And for a lot of families, it drives them to abandon those children. But Donovan's family took courageous steps. There was a daughter or a girl in the crib beside Donovan in the orphanage, and she had been found by a passing jogger by the side of the river. But Donovan's family had him for about 3 days and then courageously placed him on the steps of this orphanage run by believing people that cares for disabled orphans. And so we came away from China and adopting Donovan realizing this birth mom, this birth family, they are unsung heroes. He has been sacrificially loved by them.
3.5 when he first met his new family, and he's 10 years old today. His sisters are 11, 14, and 17. It is a wonderful story, and it is now reaching the hearts of so many because you wanted your son to know what courageous parents he had.
That's right.
And the book is twice as tight. It's, well, give us a quick synopsis.
Well, it's basically a parable. It's a story about a mother sparrow whose nest is broken in a storm, and her egg is hatching. So she's driven by desperation to find a new nest. And then there's that heartbreaking moment when, rather than care for this child, which she's no longer able to, she places the egg in another nest and then flies away. It's a heartbreaking story, but it's about the love of a child, that every adoption starts with an act of sacrificial love, that when a woman will carry a child and then place that child in someone else's arms, I don't think I could do that. But Donovan's mom did that for him and took great risks. And we are the beneficiaries of that. We never wanted him to wonder why he was, rejected. It wasn't that way. Desperation drove her to put the love of Christ into action and to sacrificially love him that way.
Well, this is really touching hearts. The first printing sold out in 6 weeks. It's being used at crisis pregnancy centers. Children's Aid has embraced it.
That's right.
It's gone to Sweden, and Focus on the Family endorses it as a recommended resource. I bet you can't keep a dry eye reading it, even though it's a cartoon. So profound. And it is available at our e-store. Thank you for being the story.
Thank you so much.
Both of you. And just love to all your family.